We stand at a critical moment in Earth's history, a time when humanity must choose its future. To move forward, we must recognize that in the midst of a magnificent diversity of cultures and life forms, we are one human family and one Earth community with a common destiny. Our future now depends on making the choice as a species to navigate what I call the great turning from the dominator cultures and institutions of 5,000 years of empire. Think of this as the era of inequality. Turn from the era of empire to the partnership cultures and institutions of a new era of Earth community. For 5,000 years, we humans have organized ourselves into dominator hierarchies with a few at the top and the many on the bottom, thus creating a brutal rule or be ruled, kill or be killed competition for power and privilege. We could call this empire. It institutionalizes inequality in every aspect of life. And to this day, empire reduces the vast majority of humans to conditions of deprivation and servitude that deny their rights and suppress their creative potential. Empire expropriates the common heritage resources of Earth and society to support the military forces, temples, palaces, prisons, retainers, and propagandists required to secure the interests of an elite class against the wrath of those who bear the burden. Just think what we could accomplish if we reallocated all these resources to actually meeting human needs. Thirdly, all too often, empire elevates the most power-hungry and ethically challenged to the highest positions of power. I don't know if you have any such examples here in Australia, but some may come to mind from my country. For most of this period, monarchy was the ruling institution. Now governing power resides in global financial markets, financial speculators, and the corporations that serve them. The underlying pattern of domination and exclusion, however, has remained constant throughout this 5,000 years. The social and environmental costs have always been devastating, and now they threaten the very survival of the species. Ours is a time for big ideas and bold agendas, grounded in an understanding of why we are in this mess and what we must do differently to turn the human course. The threefold crisis translates into a threefold economic agenda, organized to meet our emotional needs through the caring relationships of healthy families and communities rather than through material consumption. Create an equitable global middle-class society free from extremes of wealth and poverty by reallocating resources from those who have more than they need to those who have less. 3, organize economic life around a planetary system of self-reliant, life-serving local economies that function by the principles of sharing and cooperation characteristic of healthy ecosystems. Back when I was a senior in college, I made a decision to devote my life to ending world poverty by taking the lessons of U.S. business success out and sharing them with the other peoples of the world so everyone could be happy consumers like those of us in the United States. I went to business school with that mission in mind, and my professors in business school drilled into my mind one lesson that I have never forgotten. They said, when you find a problem, don't just solve the problem. Look at the big picture. Look at the big picture to find the upstream cause of the problem. Treat the cause, the systemic cause, so the problem will not simply replicate itself. Well, as it turned out, through the 30 years that I worked in the development establishment, my experience living and working in Africa, Latin America, and Asia led me to conclude that the institution and economic theories that my business school education had prepared me to serve were in fact the upstream cause of the misery I had gone abroad to alleviate. For example, I came to realize that health inequality is a symptom and a consequence of economic inequality. which is in turn a symptom or consequence of an economic system designed to concentrate wealth. And that, of course, translates into inequality. Now, for more than 60 years, the world's been engaged in a commitment to end poverty through economic growth. And during that period, the gap between the rich and poor has increased by orders of magnitude. Social disorder has spread, and Earth's environmental systems are collapsing. Perhaps it is because we assess economic performance against the wrong indicators and base our economic policies on false assumptions. It is time for new indicators and for new assumptions that actually fit the data. Currently, we measure economic performance by the size and rate of increase in gross domestic product, or GDP, which, if you look closely at it, is actually quite an accurate measure of the rate at which we humans are converting useful resources into toxic garbage to increase the financial assets and relative power of the already rich. Far from being a measure of well-being, GDP is a measure of the cost of producing whatever level of human wealth and well-being is to be achieved. So for more than 60 years, we've been seeking to maximize the cost, often at the expense of the health and well-being of people, which is what we really should be trying to maximize. The pursuit of GDP as our defining indicator is actually irrational. It is as if a business came forward and said, we're trying to maximize our costs to reduce our profits. That's our goal, is to maximize our costs. We'd laugh them out of the room. It's no wonder we are in such trouble. Leads to a pretty obvious conclusion. If our goal is to improve human well-being, then perhaps it's time we should start evaluating economic performance against indicators of physical, psychological, and environmental health. When I worked in the foreign aid system as Asia Regional Advisor on Development Management to the U.S. Agency for International Development, I was struck by the fact that proposals for health and education projects had to be supported by an economic analysis demonstrating that improving health and education would actually contribute to economic growth. And others here have referred to exactly this same reversal of priorities. And it seemed to me a little odd at the time, but the truth is that the bureaucratic culture in which I lived and worked was such that to question the underlying assumption that economic growth is the defining measure of development progress was to risk losing all professional credibility. I hope that we are finally moving to a point where more of us can find the courage and can be allowed to ask the basic question that for so long has been off the table. I've since come to understand that economic analysis regularly gets it wrong because it is based on false assumptions. And the failures start with the assumption that money is wealth. It isn't. Money isn't wealth. Human, social, natural, and intellectual capital are all forms of real wealth. Each has practical utility in meeting human needs and wants. Financial capital, or money, however, is of a wholly different nature. It is simply a number, an accounting chit that by social convention we are conditioned to accept in exchange for things of real value. It is a claim against real wealth, but it has no intrinsic value or utility of its own. This is one of the most fundamental points, keys to understanding what's really going amiss in our economic system. It is difficult to exaggerate the importance of this difference between financial capital, or money, and the natural capital. Natural capital, of course, includes the Earth's life support system, which would include the air we breathe. The life support system is arguably the foundation of all real wealth, as there is no life without it.